To how Kamala Harris keeps baiting Donald Trump, which would seem to be an almost observable strategy, and yet it's working. But to get into this, you have to start a little further back. Politics and power games are as old as human society. Literally, whether you're studying how an autocrat like Putin runs his country or wages wars, or mining ancient history for how empires have risen and fallen, and what rules and insights can be gleaned. Take Sun Tzu's classic, The Art of War. Experts have studied that text to this day for principles that you may have heard about even if you don't realize the original source. Take the statement, know your enemy. That's a truism in politics, as well as real war. Or avoid prolonged conflict. Also from The Art of War, a rule that cuts against these supposedly aggressive attitudes you sometimes hear that people will double down and win every conflict. Actual war strategists suggest otherwise. Now, one modern take which draws on that text and centuries of history is Robert Greene's best-selling nonfiction guide, The 48 Laws of Power. It's now in print for over 25 years, sold over 1 million copies in America alone. And tonight, with 48 days till the election, we're mining that text for how some of the 48 laws can apply to this campaign. Many successful people, by the way, have quoted the 48 laws. Greene even went on to co-author a whole second strategy book with one of its famed readers, 50 Cent. Now, here's how these laws of power can apply to this campaign. Take Law 27. Play on people's need to believe and create a cult-like following. Does that sound familiar? Greene cites the overwhelming desire to believe in something. And so he counsels emphasize enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Trump and his allies are actually blunt about using that approach.
What you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening.
You know what? If it's a cult, it's because they like what my father's doing.
Greene writes that these laws reflect how things often actually work in power structures in society. Not separately, of course, not how one might want power to operate. The world as it is, not as it could be. But there's something interesting here. He argues as a bridge to the world as it could be that the laws can be applied for a range of goals. So it could be evil or good or neutral, could be selfish or selfless. And so in competition, he argues that reformers, people who want to make the world a better place or a more just place, should still be using some of the power laws to get there. That you have to master them, use them, and then you might improve humankind. An example of using a power law to defeat a foe is stir up waters to catch fish. He advises that you make your enemies angry while staying calm yourself, gaining an advantage. You put your enemies off balance. Find the chink in their vanity through which you can rattle them and hold the strings. So even powerful performers, he argues, can be undone by their own vanity. Consider how at last week's debate, Harris took one of the most experienced TV performers that we know of and still had him emotionally responding to her chosen topics and her bait.
People start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
People don't leave my rallies. They're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
If he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him.
I fired most of those people.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
Clearly, he is having a very difficult time processing that.
Difficult time processing is a diplomatic way of saying he's being emotional. And the laws of power suggest that you could play on that vanity and emotion. So Harris may have been applying a law of power. Obviously, it was a bad night for Trump. You've seen the headlines. He took the bait. Most viewers thought she won, and he lost by 2-1. 48 laws of power. 48 days to the election. Now, you might say, okay, Ari, did you just pick that numerical overlap as a reason to study these laws in action tonight? You might say, how do we even know if I'm applying them the right way? And what would this author say about how these laws could be applied over the next 48 days? That might be a lot more interesting than me just musing on them.
Captain Pike has an illusion, and you have reality. May you find your way as pleasant.
Some thoughts about power and reality from Star Trek. We're joined by Robert Greene, a best-selling author, including the 48 Laws of Power, which is applied across statecraft, politics, and in this current campaign. 48 days to Election Day. Did you know that?
I did not realize that until your introduction. That's a pretty great coincidence. So thank you for making this happen.
Absolutely.
And thank you for the Star Trek reference.
Yeah, of course. I walked through some of them, so let me just put on the need to believe. You write, people have this desire to believe in something, emphasizing enthusiasm over rationality and clear thinking. Does Trump use that law?
Yes, Trump has created a cult, and in that particular chapter, I describe the laws that people use to create a cult, going back to the earliest cults in Europe in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, culminating with the great Mesmer, for which we get the word mesmerize. And to create a cult, the first thing is you have to create a very simple message. You can't be too complicated, and you have to repeat it over and over again. Make America great again. Immigrants are destroying the country. You have to have these kind of spectacles that kind of rally the masses, his famous rallies that he has. And then also you have to have an enemy. You have to have a very powerful us versus them dynamic in which you, the members of the cult, are facing this enemy that's trying to destroy you. You're actually the victims in this. And you use apocalyptic rhetoric about, I'm the only person that can save you from this evil enemy, okay? And so he's used all this. The thing about a cult, though, is, Ari, is the people who are in a cult don't realize that they're in a cult. If they understood that I am in a cult, they would get out of it. So the people who are in Donald Trump's cult, they'll be the first ones to argue that that's not the case at all, that we're actually the ones in some kind of Kamala Harris type cult. But the thing that's happening is when a cult starts to decline, because what it depends on is this glue that keeps everybody together, which is this enemy that they're facing, the us versus them dynamic. When that glue starts to come apart, as it is now, and people are leaving the rallies a little bit early, not believing so firmly in the rhetoric that he's supplying, it becomes kind of dangerous. It becomes the declining phase of a cult. And what the cult leader has to do is he has to continually up the ante.
Right, and it becomes like a drug fix.